Hi, I am so excited to share with you this wonderful carrot oat muffin. And I want to talk a little bit about oats, making sure that you get certified gluten-free oats. There are 5 or 6 companies that make certified gluten-free oats, and they go to great lengths to make sure that they're gluten-free. The seeds, the plants are grown only in areas where wheat hasn't been grown in 3 years. The companies have dedicated trucks to get the seeds to the mill. They have dedicated mills. This is really the big part. They have invested millions of dollars to make sure that they are milling their oats, and only oats, in that facility. There is no wheat in that facility at all. They test the final product to make sure that there's no gluten in it. The oats that you get in the grocery store, say Quaker oats or generic oats, have been shown to contain gluten sometimes. Sometimes it's a little, sometimes it's a lot. You just don't have any idea when you're buying them, so don't buy those. So today we are going to use certified gluten-free oats. This brand is from Cream Hill Estates. I want to also talk about Bob's Red Mill that does have gluten-free products, but their oat flour is not certified gluten-free. It is not run on the dedicated gluten-free facility, so don't use this because this hasn't been tested to make sure that there's no gluten in it. I also want to talk a little bit about the specific wonderful nutrition that's in oats. Oats have a special fiber. It's called beta-glucan, and it has been shown to lower cholesterol. So it's wonderful for that. It also, just the general fiber, like any other kind of good fibrous food, helps to improve blood sugar levels, and it helps to reduce constipation, which can be a problem when you have gluten intolerance. There is sometimes a controversy. Some people will say that they can't tolerate oats, and I completely respect that, but I also think that there's more people who can tolerate oats, and I would encourage you to try them after you have been successfully on the gluten-free diet for quite a length of time, and your symptoms are gone and you're feeling much, much better. Don't try oats when you're brand new to the diet and you're trying to figure all this stuff out. You need to make sure that you've had no gluten in your diet so that you know that if you react to these, it's not some hidden gluten that's in your diet. But I love them. They taste great. They have wonderful nutrition. So I would say go ahead and give them a try, and I hope you like it. Okay, now we're going to talk about the ingredients. We start with buttermilk. Buttermilk makes nice, tender, baked products. We're using the rolled oats. We're using oat flour, vegetable oil, dark brown sugar, and I like to use dark brown sugar because it has more antioxidants than white sugar, which has none. There will be a link on the recipe page to information on antioxidants and sweeteners. This recipe has so many good things in it. Look at this. 1.5 cups of grated carrots. I buy these pre-shredded, very easy, from the store. Walnuts and raisins. We have an egg. We have xanthan, which is really important in a lot of gluten-free baked products. It helps give it moisture and helps it hold together so that it doesn't crumble and fall apart. There also will be a link on the recipe page for more information on how and when to use xanthan. But I've taken care of that for you here. We figured it out. Baking powder, salt, cinnamon, and I like to use fresh nutmeg. You can buy it already grated, but this is just a highlight of the day when I can freshly grate nutmeg. So there you go, lots of good stuff into this wonderful muffin. Now to the tools. We're going to use muffin tins, and I like to use muffin papers just because I like to have a paper. 2 bowls, one for the wet ingredients, one for the dry. Measuring spoons, measuring cups, a spatula for mixing it up. And now these things are not required, but they make life a lot more fun. This is a microplane zester for grating the nutmeg. This is a scoop to scoop out and portion the muffins. Not necessary, not absolutely necessary, but fun to have. Okay, we are ready to go, but the very first thing that you need to do is turn on the oven. Muffins need a hot oven, so turn it on to 425, and if you have to wait for the oven. Don't put these muffins into a cold oven or they'll just sit there. They need a hot oven to shoot up. Okay, second thing we're going to do is we're going to soften the oatmeal. So we're going to start with a cup of oatmeal, and to that we're going to add a half a cup of buttermilk. All right. Very easy. We're going to add a fourth of a cup of oil. This can be any kind of oil you want. I would choose something that doesn't have a lot of flavor. All right. And then we're going to put in an egg. And we're going to stir this up and let this sit for about 10 minutes. You want to make sure that you have softened your oatmeal, and so you mix it up and you're going to let it sit for about 10 minutes, and that will help it absorb some of the liquid from the buttermilk and the eggs, and it'll make a tenderer muffin. Okay, so this is what it looks like right now. We'll show you what it looks like in 10 minutes too. Okay, now on to the dry ingredients. This is the certified gluten-free oat flour, and we need 1 cup. So I'm just going to lightly fling it around in here. And then I'm going to take the edge of my spatula and level it off. And then that way I have a cup. All right. And then the brown sugar, the proper way to measure brown sugar. I need 3/4 of a cup. And what you do is put it in like that, and then take the edge of your container and push it down so that it's firm in there. So that's 1, 2, 3. All right. Then the xanthan is already measured. I'm going to put it in here in a little blob in one side. I'm going to put the baking powder next to it. I'm going to put the salt next to that, and I'm going to put the cinnamon next to that. Now, nutmeg, if you had ground nutmeg, you just measure it and put it in. But this is my microplane zester, and this is a whole nutmeg here. And you just simply grate it right into your bowl. And you're kind of guessing on the amount. But it just smells wonderful. Alright. And what I want to really show you here is that when you're baking in general, and when you're doing gluten-free baking particularly, you may have lots of different ingredients. And while you're making something, the phone rings. And then you come back and you're like, oh, did I put it in there? I don't know. I don't know what I did. Put it in little blobs, and then you can go, oh yeah, I can see the xanthan, I can see the salt, I can see the various different things, so that you can double check to make sure everything that needs to be in here is in here before you start stirring it up. Okay, we're going to stir now, and we want to make sure that everything is equally mixed in here. And I can tell you that the brown sugar is really the hardest part of this recipe to get mixed in well. Sometimes you end up with little balls of brown sugar, and if you leave it like that, you get a little hit of melted sweetness in your muffin, which isn't a bad thing. But sometimes you want to just take your bits of brown sugar and just squish them between your fingers, and they'll mix in better. I also want to make a note about using xanthan and things. You really need to mix the xanthan thoroughly in with the dry ingredients, and then add the wet ingredients to that. If you try to add powdered xanthan to a wet ingredient, the outsides of it absorb water so fast that they get into little icky slimy clumps, and they don't mix in well. So in general, in baking, make sure your xanthan is really well mixed in. Another sometimes problem ingredient is baking powder. Sometimes that has a little round white ball, and that would be a white ball. And if you get that in a muffin, that is really nasty. nasty. So you want to make sure that that's all mixed in. So you can use a whisk here, you can use a spatula, really your fingers are the best thing to use. And you can see that this oat flour is not a fine powdery flour, it's kind of a coarse grain, which is just the way it is. That's not a problem, we're working with that. So, there you go, all mixed up. Next up, the wet ingredients go into the dry ingredients, and this is called the muffin method. This I learned in 7th grade home ec, which of course we were using wheat at the time. But so we have our mixture of oats, buttermilk, egg, and oil is going into our flour mixture with the spices and the xanthan. And all this wonderful stuff, these veggies, fruits, nuts, all going in here. You just dump it in. Most muffins will not have this much good stuff in them. Most muffins that you buy are made with lots of refined flour, or refined starches, and that have pretty much no nutrition in them. And I don't like them. This is a wonderfully nutritious, satisfying, stick-with-you, wonderful muffin that you can have for breakfast. It also holds well, and so you can make it the night before and have it for breakfast the next morning. You can keep it in your fridge for several days even without it getting dry or icky. And you can make them and put them in the freezer. They hold well in the freezer too. So if there's one of you or 12 of you, there's no reason not to make this whole recipe. Alright, so I'm mixing it in well until all of the powdery stuff is mixed in and moist. When we were in 7th grade and learning about making muffins, they talked about not over mixing the muffins because you could make them tough. We don't have that problem here. We don't have any gluten to get tough. We also want to stir it and make sure that that xanthan has time to hydrate a little bit, so more stirring won't hurt it. Alright, you need to see this. All this goodness in here. Here you go. Okay, now comes the fun part, getting it from the bowl into the muffin tin. I have let this sit for about 5 minutes just to make sure that the xanthan has a little bit more time to hydrate. It's not that important with this recipe that has all these wonderful carrot shreds to help hold it together. With some other muffin recipes and other cake recipes, it is more important, and we'll do a muffin recipe like that too. So I'm using this fun scoop. I already know that when I use this scoop that I have, I might only get 10 muffins. But I like a nice rounded top on my muffin. Look at all that carrot in there. Alright, so I'm just going to go like so and try to bend those carrots down to the bottom. Those are going to be beauties. I didn't really even get 10 this time. We have one little one, that's okay. If it's important for you to get a certain number, you could make more or make them smaller. So this is going to go into a preheated 425 degree oven for 25 minutes, and we'll be right back. These are out of the oven, cooked them for 25 minutes, and to test for doneness, I pretty much just touch them. If they seem firm and have some resistance, I think that's a great test, then that's enough of a test most of the time. You can also test them with a toothpick, stick it in, and if it comes out clean, then it's done. On occasion, I've gotten caught where it came out clean and it still wasn't done, so I still think the best way is to look at them and test them and make sure that there's some resistance. So now, I'm going to try it. Alright. Smells wonderful. When I break it open, oh, it's just got all kinds of carrot shreds in it, and you can even see the whole oatmeal in here. And it's really yummy. It's moist and tender, chewy, a little bit chewy and crunchy from the carrots. I didn't get any nuts in this part, but that would be a great part too. I think you're going to love them. Give them a try. See if you agree.